Do you ever notice how we fill every single second of our lives with noise, like real noise? Music, podcasts, notifications, background chatter, but also mental noise, stress, overthinking, planning, worrying, scrolling. There's almost no space left in the day for silence, and not just the quiet you hear when you turn the volume down, but deep, internal silence. The kind that lets something bigger than you actually speak. Now, here's a wild idea. What if silence isn't just the absence of sound? What if it's actually the starting point of something massive, something holy? We're talking about the Holy Spirit here. And yeah, I get it, that phrase sounds like something distant or old school, something tied to fire and brimstone preaching. But what if the Holy Spirit is real, active, and trying to communicate, not in thunder and lightning, but in quiet, consistent, almost subconscious ways? Wow. Most of us are so jammed up in the head that even if the Holy Spirit is speaking, we're missing it, completely flying past us. We want this loud, booming voice from the sky or a burning bush moment, but we ignore the fact that spiritual communication usually starts quiet, like real quiet, almost like your own thoughts, but deeper, more pure. And if you're not tuned in, not listening, you'll never even know it happened. Think about this. When's the last time you sat in silence? Not zoning out watching Netflix with your phone in your hand. That's not silence. I'm talking about intentional, uncomfortable, let me confront my own consciousness kind of silence. That moment when the brain starts to detox from all the scrolling, all the opinions, all the expectations. That's the gateway. That's where the voice of God begins to break through. A lot of ancient texts, mystics, monks, they all agree on this. Silence is sacred. Stillness is not laziness, it's a portal. It's a space where you're not just hearing your own ego scream, but you might actually catch that subtle whisper of the divine. That whisper that says, this isn't the right relationship, or go ahead and take that risk, or you're not alone. It's not always words. Sometimes it's a knowing, a gut check, a peace that doesn't make sense, but it always starts in silence. The modern world hates silence. It's constantly screaming for our attention. Devices ping all day long. Opinions fly non-stop. Your to-do list never sleeps. Your mind's on overdrive. And most of us wake up every day already mid-sprint. No wonder we feel spiritually disconnected. No wonder everything spiritual feels like something we used to believe in or don't have time for. But if the Holy Spirit is real, and man, I believe he is, then it makes sense he wouldn't try to compete with the noise. It's not his style. See, the most powerful messages you'll ever receive don't come in chaos, they come in calm. That's where inspiration hits, that's where people get clarity. You hear artists talk about ideas coming out of nowhere. You hear entrepreneurs say, I just knew I had to do it. That's not random, that's the flow. That's where the Holy Spirit speaks, in the margins, in the in-between moments, in that breath between thoughts. And that still small voice just waiting for you to recognize it underneath all the mental junk. But here's the catch. It's not going to shout over your playlists or power through your anxiety. It's subtle on purpose. Because you have free will, you have to want to hear it. You have to create space. You have to invite it in. And that's where silence flips from being empty to full. Not full of noise, but full of presence. Most people think that if they don't feel some spiritual high, or if they're not having visions or prophetic dreams, then they must be disconnected from anything divine. But the truth is, you're never actually disconnected. Not really. You're just massively distracted. And that's a huge distinction. See, being disconnected implies a break in the line, a full separation. But being distracted, that just means your attention's been hijacked. It means the connection is still there, but you're tuned into the wrong frequency. You're staring at your phone, but the signal's still coming through. You're just not picking it up. Now let's be real. The world has become a circus of distractions. We're bombarded with information 24/7. Scrolling, liking, judging, comparing. It's endless. Our minds are constantly tied up in loops of comparison anxiety, performance pressure, and dopamine chasing. Every time there's a gap, waiting in line, sitting in traffic, lying in bed, we fill it instantly. There's no room left for anything quieter, anything deeper. And if the Holy Spirit is speaking, which I believe he is, it's not that we can't hear him, it's that we've trained ourselves to ignore subtlety. You were born with the capacity to connect to something divine. That didn't disappear just because school or life or religion got loud. That inner line is still there. It's just buried under years of staying busy, staying safe, and staying surface level. The distractions aren't just on the outside either, they're inward. Overthinking, fear, guilt, doubt, identity confusion. That inner chaos is a fog machine that clouds real clarity. And suddenly you're walking in a spiritual haze, thinking you lost the map, but really, you've just been staring at the wrong signs. People are out here chasing some massive lightning bolt moment, a perfectly crafted sermon, a supernatural miracle, a life or death crisis, to finally feel connected to God. But you were never disconnected. You were just tuned out. Maybe your expectations were shaped by too many dramatized depictions of spirituality. Movies, churches, that made it feel like only the chosen ones get the real experiences. But nah, this is for everyone. The signal's open, the access has always been there. You're not broken. You're not spiritually deaf. You're just overloaded. You've been reacting to life instead of responding. You've been letting culture set your rhythm. And that rhythm is chaos. It's fast, noisy, numbing. But the Holy Spirit doesn't traffic in chaos. He's not in the static. He's that moment of hesitation before you make a decision. The gentle conviction when something feels off. The strange peace that shows up when everything around you is falling apart. That's him. Not loud, but persistent. The thing is, distraction has this side effect where it teaches you to doubt your own discernment. You get so used to external voices, experts, influences, algorithms, that your inner signal gets rusty. But discernment isn't gone, it's just buried. And that's what the Holy Spirit taps into. He speaks right into your deep places, past the noise, past the logic, even past some of your deeply held fears, and guides you through nudges, shifts in energy, windows of clarity you can't explain. Not dramatic, but undeniably real when you feel it. You don't need a mountaintop moment to reconnect with God. You just need to slow down long enough to realize you're not out of range. Maybe you've been numbing yourself with busyness, thinking it's productivity. Maybe you've confused overstimulation with purpose. But deep inside, there's a part of you that already knows when something feels off, when a decision feels peaceful even if it's risky, when a conversation stirs something bigger. That's the signal. That's the Spirit trying to break through the distraction. You ever get that feeling in your gut, like something's off, even if you can't explain it? Or maybe the opposite, that weird kind of peace or pull towards something that looks crazy on paper, but just feels right in your bones? That's not random. That gut feeling isn't just a biological accident or emotional static buzzing from your nervous system. It might feel like instinct, but sometimes instinct is the doorway to the divine. The Holy Spirit doesn't always roll in with neon signs and angels blowing trumpets. Sometimes he shows up in your intuition, that quiet inner yes or no that hits before you've even had time to think it through. We're taught to distrust our instincts. Society basically wires us to favor logic, strategy, probability. If it can't be measured, it doesn't matter. If it can't be proven, it shouldn't be trusted. But the problem with living like that is you're cutting off a whole frequency of communication. You're ignoring the fact that your soul was built with receptors that pick up guidance beyond just the five senses. The Holy Spirit works within your spirit, the deepest, truest part of you, and sometimes that message comes through like pure, gut-level clarity that overrides everything else. And let's be real, you've felt that before. You've been about to sign a deal, date a person, move to a new place, and something inside you tightened or glowed. That wasn't just anxiety or excitement. That could have been a warning or confirmation. And if it came from the Holy Spirit, it wasn't just about the moment, it was about your mission. People ask, how do I know if it's God or just my own thoughts? It's a fair question, but over time you start to learn the tone of the Holy Spirit. His voice is different. It doesn't pressure or manipulate. It doesn't ride on fear or ego. When it's him, it often carries a weight that's surprisingly still. It doesn't scream, but it doesn't leave either. It just sits there, steady, like gravity. You can argue with it, ignore it, distract yourself from it, but it keeps tapping you on the shoulder. That's the gut feeling that doesn't fade with time. It gets louder in the silence. Sometimes you don't know why you're supposed to say no to something. It doesn't line up on paper. Your friends think you're crazy for passing on that opportunity. But your gut is silent screaming, get out. That's a spiritual download that's trying to protect you from something your eyes can't see yet. Other times the risk looks insane. Starting over, moving, launching that idea, making that phone call. You feel ridiculous, and yet your gut is serene. You feel oddly at peace with taking the leap. That's the nudge. That's not you being reckless. That might be God leading you into a better alignment with your real purpose. The Holy Spirit doesn't just show up in churches. He doesn't only talk to preachers or mystics. He's not reserved for the spiritually elite. If you're breathing, you're on the list. God designed you with receptors, and your intuition, when it's not tangled up in fear or trauma, is one of the sharpest tools in your spiritual toolkit. The modern world doesn't promote that kind of listening. It promotes reaction, logic, network, speed. But spiritual clarity often waits behind the slowness, behind the raw, honest gut feels we try to intellectualize away. You've had moments where your gut told you something and you didn't listen. And you paid the price. Regret hit hard. And then later you said something like, "I knew it, I just didn't trust it." That it is important. That it has a voice. What if that it was God the whole time, speaking gently, patiently, giving you clues and confirmations, teaching you how to trust what's deeper than reason? We live in a world where questioning things is nearly treated like rebellion, especially when it comes to faith or anything spiritual. People are afraid to look too closely at what they believe because they don't want the house of cards to fall. But the irony is, real faith isn't scared of questions. In fact, questions are part of how we grow. They're how we get free from surface-level belief systems that were handed to us but never really made sense. If the Holy Spirit is truly real and trying to speak to you, then He's not intimidated by your curiosity. He's not offended when you ask hard, uncomfortable things. It's actually in that wrestling, in that honest seeking, that you clear space to finally hear Him more clearly. Look, blind trust can feel safe for a while, but it can also keep you passive, numb, just nodding along out of fear or tradition. That's not connection, that's routine. And the voice of God rarely operates through routine. He's after relationship, not performance. And relationships involve exploration. Sometimes you're going to have to tear some stuff down. Old assumptions, outdated theology, cultural conditioning, religious guilt, to make room for the real thing. That's not a crisis of faith, that's construction. That's Holy Spirit doing deep work from the inside. We've been taught to associate doubt with disobedience, but there's a massive difference between doubting God and doubting the versions of Him we've been taught to accept without question. Some of the noise you're hearing isn't the devil, and it's not you being spiritually weak. It's your soul starting to wake up and realize, wait, this doesn't line up with who I know God to be. That internal friction, that's the beginning of the Holy Spirit whispering, ask more, go deeper. I'm not afraid of your doubts. That might be the most powerful part of this whole thing. Knowing that the Spirit of God is not fragile. He invites questions. He thrives in the middle of mystery. And let's just be real, deep questions often show up during life's messiest moments, when everything breaks, when the formula doesn't work, when the prayers go unanswered or the people let you down. That's when your spiritual autopilot slams into the wall, and it hurts. But what if that crash is actually divine disruption? What if the Holy Spirit allows old structures to fall, precisely so you'll stop placing your faith in things that can't hold it? That's not Him abandoning you. That's Him finally getting your full attention. That's what questioning can do. It creates space. Space where the plastic version of faith burns off and something more raw, more real can emerge. You stop pretending and start listening. The filters come down. You stop looking for perfect answers and start looking for authentic presence. You stop needing everything to be black and white and allow yourself to sit in the tension. And that's usually when the voice of the Spirit gets louder, clearer, not because He wasn't speaking before, but because the noise of your pre-programmed beliefs got turned down. Openness isn't weakness. It's actually one of the highest forms of spiritual intelligence. An open heart is fertile ground, not for every wind of opinion or trend, but for the Spirit to plant seeds that actually grow. And yeah, it's scary. Questioning can lead you through some seriously disorienting territory. You might let go of things you once clung to as absolute, but if you keep your heart open and your spirit anchored, the stuff you pick up on the other side is stronger, purer, less performative, and more connected. That's when faith stops being a scripted answer and starts being a lived experience. You stop echoing what you've been told and start owning what you've discovered. Not by force, not by guilt, but because the Holy Spirit led you there himself. Not through thunder, but through the quiet process of questioning that cracked something open.